Perhaps say what the story is you want to write about, and then read.
I read about the Costa Rica arrival.
Yeah.
I'm never done any travel writing, never paid any attention, never done anything, so I don't know how good this is. We arrived at the Costa Rican airport sweating from the heat and spent a leisurely amount of time going through customs. The people we noticed were extremely helpful and smiling, the atmosphere almost jovial. It was so very different from the hustle bustle of North American airports and customs we had just left behind. Everyone at the airport seemed so relaxed, and I wondered, is this what others in the country were like? We were, if we ever got through customs and got our baggage, about to find out.
Good. Okay. Somebody else have one to read? Yeah. Don't be shy.
With 4-foot waves crashing into our kayaks and the wind pushing us, we had to hold steady and wait our turn to head into shore, where the guide would grab hold of our boat and help us land. My anxiety level rose when the first person got broadsided and his kayak capsized.
Very good. That has
excellent.
a lot of tension and action.
Yeah, you can
Gets
feel it when you're reading it.
Gets you very good. Another one?
You can tell what it is. What surprised me most about the museum at Hiroshima is the way it touched me as a mother. It was a museum of lost children.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, very powerful.
Is that one that you could put in present tense?
You could put yourself there in that museum at that moment looking. So you could, you sometimes just have to play with it a bit, but I think you could easily put that, you could start that in present tense. I mean, it isn't always necessary to start your thing in present tense. A lot of mine don't. But it just, if you do, it sort of makes you jump right into the scene right away, So that's good. Now, the next thing is like the various different kinds of slants you can take to your stories. Okay, for instance, our symposium this year is ecotourism, because this is a very popular type of travel these days, is ecotourism. And I think they're going to have industry people there that have take you on kayaking trips and all those kinds of things. Also, adventure tourism is another one that's very, very popular, especially with the sort of younger, under 40s group of people. They really like those adventure trips that are offered these days. Last year's symposium was culinary travel, because that's another thing that's interesting, writing about the food when you're traveling. And on that subject, I had here it is. This group called Writers Abroad online. It's a group from online. I think it's centered in England actually. They were collecting stories from people about culinary experiences, and it's called Foreign Flavors. This is about travelers and food experiences on your trip. And so I submitted this story about my favorite Greek meal, and it's just a short one called "A Feast Fit for a Bandit," lamb kleftiko, arnaki kleftiko. And I explain how I lived for a couple of years in Lala, a shepherd's village in the mountains of South Evia in Greece. During that time, I got to know the shepherds and their sheep. I loved the sheep since I was a child, living in Lala, waking each morning to the magical sound of sheep bells as the shepherds drove their flocks up the mountainside was an experience I'll always treasure. And then I go on to talk about the sheep in the village, and then discovering this absolutely totally delicious dish that they serve in Greece. And what it is kleftiko means stolen meat. And during the Greek War of Independence, the klefts, that's like kleptomaniac is a Greek word meaning thief. And these revolutionaries up in the mountains would steal sheep and they would roast them in a pit under, covered up, so that you couldn't smell it, so no one would detect that the meat was there cooking. So from that thing, they devised this way where you put your lamb in a thing, and you can put some zucchini and stuff and wrap it all up, and you cook it in the oven. And it's called arnil kleptiko. It's really delicious with feta cheese on it and stuff. But it originated in the War of Independence when the revolutionaries would steal the sheep up in the mountains. So that was kind of interesting. And there's all these different stories in this book that are just about food experiences when you're traveling. So that's another thing. Human interest stories, cultural conflicts, gender bias, all kinds of different things. And health and wellness trips are also something that's quite interesting for people to know about. Of course, there's the funny stories. Of course, there's the bad trips, and there's the roundups where like your 8 favorite B&Bs or wineries in the Okanagan, that kind of thing. There's sports trips like skiing events. When the Olympics were on that winter here, I wrote quite a lot of stories for the Vancouver Guide. I went around to a lot of things, got a lot of stories out of that. Just writing about, the sports and things. And then there's seasonal stories you can write about different ways people celebrate Christmas or Easter or things like that. There's always interesting stuff there. Investigative stories, also how to avoid scams, how to pack your suitcase, blah, blah, blah. And again, the informative things. So there's all different kinds of stories that you can write about for travel. And so usually when you write an article, I know for the Travel Through History, I will ask people to include at the end of it an if you go section. So that's where you don't have to bog your story down with talking about how long it took you to find the hotel or where you stayed. So what you can do in the end is you can put that information in the end of the story about where to go, how to get there, etc., etc. Here's an example here. Somewhere, where's my story here? Oh yeah, this one here is about going to see this monastery in Amalgos, and at the end it's like, there's buses, how to get there, and all that kind of stuff, or you might recommend a place to stay, or anything that goes in the if you go part. And you can put links to online sites that have more information. So quite often when you're submitting stories, they want that extra information that you don't have to put into the body of the story. You put it extra at the end. Things like the best days, the best markets in the place that you're going to, or how to find the post offices and the telephone office, and how to find, well, you don't have to worry about the telephone office anymore. Rental, where to rent skis and motorbikes and stuff like that. All that extra stuff goes in a thing at the end of your story. You don't have to put it all within the body of the story. Now what you really want to do though, is you want to include people. And if you can to include also, besides the people, to once in a while tuck in a little bit of dialogue, even if it's only 1 or 2 lines of dialogue, so that you're not the only person in that place. There's always people around you, and there's always people that you run into that are quite interesting, that you might have a conversation with. People that might tell you an anecdote, a mythological story about the place or whatever. And you want to be, you don't have to go into elaborate descriptions of these people, but just a little bit so that the reader can actually see them and they become kind of a live part of your story. There's this one here that I got is an article that somebody wrote about Cuba. And he's visiting this nightclub place, it's like a bar in Baracoa. And he has some really interesting things in here. So I'll just read a little bit of it. So you get this gist of what I mean about putting the people in there and a bit of dialogue. This is no ordinary night spot. Never, I repeat, never underestimate the experience of your initial entrance. Squeezing past a tight cluster of cycle taxi drivers that compete enthusiastically for business outside, I'm welcomed nonchalantly into the fray by an ancient cloakroom attendant with a large cigar lodged firmly in his mouth. Buenas noches, he croaks charitably as he skillfully relieves me of 1 peso and encourages me under duress to take a seat. Here in the club's foggy interior, the atmosphere is seductively Baracoan with a hint of voodoo thrown in for good measure. The hot night air making it feel as if I've been trapped inside a pressure cooker that is throbbing rhythmically with some kind of dark and mysterious energy. And then down here later, he says, okay, in order to avoid any head injuries of my own, I shuffle my chair adroitly over toward the bar where in the course of procuring an ice-filled mojito cocktail in a recycled jam jar, I'm apprehended by an effusive Baracoan girl who emerges dreamlike from a dance floor thick with cigar fumes and hypnotic voodoo rhythms. You want to learn how to dance, muchacho? Anywhere else in the world I would have probably run a mile, but here in Baracoa, a town of splendid isolation and surrealistically uninhibited locals, one feels it would almost be rude to say no. Yeah, okay, why not? It's hard to remember exactly what happens next. So just tucking little bits in there and little teeny bits of dialogue really make that whole scene come very alive to you. And wherever you have an opportunity to do that, maybe the story you're writing doesn't necessarily have that opportunity, but wherever you do, try to put the people in there. Just a glimpse of them is enough, so that you can feel that, what's going on around you when you're in that place. For